I see posts every day on my feeds from somebody who is dealing with pain or chronic illness. And some of these people are not very old at all, but they have markers that they're unhealthy. Now, y'all know I'm no fan of the CDC, but they say that as many as 9 out of 10, quote, older people report having a chronic illness, as many as 8 out of 10 in midlife, and as many as 6 out of 10 kids. But does it have to be this way? Is this really how God meant for us to be? Is this the way it's just always been? Is sickness and disease inevitable as we age? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go. Hey, Mama, you have found your way home. This is If Mama Ain't Healthy, Ain't Nobody Healthy, and I'm your host, Lori Morris. I'm a Christian wife, mom, and midwife, and I'm so glad you're finally here. I know you're tired of feeling bounced around the system, never feeling heard or understood, and you're sick and tired of feeling sick and stuck. Whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or in the months and years after pregnancy, I want you to know I'm here to help you find your way out of confusion and into true wellness by working with God's beautiful design, not against it. From your physical health to your emotional and spiritual health, there is no topic off limits as we walk together through all seasons of motherhood. So if you're ready to step out of the world's way and into God's way of living well and loving life, take a short break from changing diapers and cleaning the kitchen again for the third time today and sit a spell with me. What you learn today could change generations. Y'all, it's review time, but you're not going to believe this. I've made it through all the reviews. Now, I say that, but I don't think I ever started on number 1, but I don't have time to go back and see where I started and then read the old ones. All I'm saying right here is that if you haven't left me a review yet over on Apple Podcasts, now's your time. Because if you go leave me a 5-star written review right now, your review could be on the next podcast. Now, that being said, I record ahead, so it won't necessarily be like next week, but it'll be really soon. As soon as it pops up and I see it and I have the opportunity to record again. So go leave me a review. As I've told you so many times, this is the way that the, podcast algorithms, I guess that's what you would call it, decide what they're going to show people. So when you leave me a review, it helps me to reach other moms like you who need this information. So to those of you who may have left a review long ago, like before I started reading reviews, I apologize. You're welcome to leave another one and I'll read it now. But for those of you who have never left a review, now is also your time. If you don't have Apple Podcasts, you can always leave me comments or things like that on YouTube. It helps me in the very same way over there. Or you can shoot me an email or whatever it may be. Okay. It just helps encourage me so much. And like I said, this is just the way that the internet world out there decides how it's going to show new people content. And it's how I find new mamas like you who need this information. So go leave me a review. Enough about enough about that. Let's get into our content today, because I gotta admit, it has been very discouraging to me as somebody who is very interested in healthy living to look around me and see the complete lack of health, not only in our country, but especially in the church these days. I don't know if I mentioned, but a couple of weeks ago, I was at the annual conference that we always go to in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is made up of, I think there was almost 5,000, maybe a little bit more than 5,000 Christians that were there. And as I looked around, I mean, it is just a picture of poor health, sadly. And it's very discouraging because it tells a lot about how the enemy has gotten into our head and convinced us there's nothing we can do. Honestly, the way I see health is similar to how I wish that people wanted to know and obey the truth that we find in God's word, but they just don't. Like, the information is there, but people just don't want to embrace it. And we also know the truth about health, just like we know the truth about salvation in God's word. We can know the truth about health and the truth about how our bodies work. But people have been conditioned to basically want everything to be easy. We live in a convenience world, so everything's got to be easy. They don't want to make the healthy choices. They want to do what feels good in the moment and then get a pill to fix it later, or just deal with it later. But how often does later even come? It's always later, right? It seems that most people just don't even make the connection between their lifestyle choices and their health outcomes. And they just think that sickness is just what comes. Like we're just eventually going to get sick. They don't make the connection that that might not necessarily be true. People comment all the time about their aches and pains and difficulties. And then in the same breath, they write about indulging in sweets or any number of other things that are known to be unhealthy. And yet, in the same post, I'll see people saying how difficult of a time that they're having. Sorry, there's a fly in here. If you're watching on YouTube, you just saw that. I apologize. But they write about their aches and their pains while writing about the things that they're doing to increase those aches and pains. They don't acknowledge that one exacerbates, if not just flat out causes, the other. Now, I don't want this episode to be negative. I just wanted to briefly show the problem that we have. But honestly, I don't think I have to go into too much detail because you already know the problem. You see it all around you too. You might even see it in the mirror if you're honest. Maybe you're realizing that what you've ignored for far too many years and is really maybe the result of your choices. And maybe you're here because you're ready to make a change. Maybe you just really don't know how. So instead of dwelling on what we see around us and just kind of lamenting of all the bad things, let's instead take a different approach today. Let's look at it this way. Is sickness inevitable? Is it just something that's going to happen? Are we always going to get sicker as we get older? I think you know the answer to that. Now, you may have convinced yourself that those things are true, that sickness is inevitable and we are going to get sick. But if you just look around you in your life, I know that you know that there are people around you who are much older and yet they're not sick, right? So obviously it's not inevitable because if it was inevitable, everybody would be sick. And while maybe most people are, not everyone is. And I bet if you look at some of those people who aren't, you can identify some patterns that may indicate why they are the ones that are healthy. Now, let me say what this is not about. This is not about whether we can live forever, because of course we can't. We are all terminal. We all have a date with physical death, and none of us know exactly what day that'll happen, right? We know that. I'm not here trying to tell you that if you do the things that we talk about here, that you're going to live forever. Of course you're not. But what I am telling you is that in those days that God gives you here on this earth, you don't necessarily have to be miserable. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do that will improve the quality of your days here and thereby make it more easy for you to serve the Lord the way that He has asked you to do. And that's why the fact that we know that we have a date with death, that's why we have to be sure that we're ready. That's why we have to be sure that we stay in the Word and that we've obeyed the gospel so that our salvation can be sure. And if you want to learn more about that, that's actually a lot or pretty much all I talked about back in episode 158. So go back and listen to that. If you're not sure, we talked a lot about Bible study and things like that over there. You can go check that out. That's not what this episode is about. But I just want to acknowledge, I don't want anybody to say, oh, she thinks you're going to live forever if you eat well and take care of yourself. No, I don't think that at all. But I do think that God did not mean for us to be here sick. He meant for us to be here getting busy for Him, to do His work. And we can't do His work when we're sick and miserable. So, do we have to be sick and miserable? Do we have to be in pain? Well, I think you already know the answer. You know plenty of people, as I mentioned a minute ago, who have maybe lived into their 90s or 100s with able bodies. I know I do. And you know that many of those people have been active and healthy into those later years. They didn't just sit down and quit doing stuff. They stayed active and they stayed busy. Okay? There's a key there. We're going to get into that. You also probably know more people, like, so you've got the number of people that you know who were that healthy into their later years. You probably know more than that number who couldn't even walk a mile today without significant pain or discomfort in much earlier years. But God made our bodies to work and to work well. Y'all, I know how hard it is to know if something being sold to you online is worth anything these days because there is so much counterfeit junk floating around. And beyond that, it seems like everybody has a course to sell you. So I want to help you make an informed decision about your childbirth education the same way I want you to make informed decisions about everything in your maternity care. That's why, for a limited time, I'm giving you free access to the first module of my Christian childbirth course. You can see it for yourself, for free, for a whole week, for absolutely no charge. And you don't even need to enter in a credit card number. The first module is going to give you a look at the underpinnings of the whole course, which is God, the creator of everything, including the creator of pregnancy and the birth process. He made it. So we should look to Him for our guidance. And the first module lays the foundation for that. If you're not familiar with me, I'm Lori Morris, and I'm a certified nurse midwife. I used to be all medical, and I worked in the medicalized maternity care system. But with time, I saw the truth. And I became a midwife who attends home births and who had all her babies outside of that system. That gives me a unique perspective because I've been on both sides. I can help you understand what happens on the medical side while fully preparing you for the natural side, including how to navigate decisions and interventions while also wrapping you in Scripture to remind you of God's truth. That you are made to do this no matter what the world says. There is no other course out there like this one, and I want you to see it for yourself. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course free trial and get signed up today. Again, that's go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course free trial. How do I know that? Well, I know that because of the beauty and how He designed us and the intricate detail and thought that He put into every part of our bodies. And just know that unless you study cellular biology, you don't know the half of the intricacy. Like there's a lot we can just see with our eyes, but there's so much more on a cellular level. And when you study things like the sodium-potassium pump in the kidneys, and how such tiny little tubules control the fluid balance of our entire body, you start to understand it. That's just one tiny example of how He so intricately built us. And you can start to understand little bits and pieces, but you'll never really fully understand how much He loves us and how much detail He put into making our bodies work. When you study things like the amount of development that has to happen for a baby to ever go from two little cells from two different people into an entire human being made of all the different organs and cells, and you realize that that same level of microscopic control is going on in those people who are tiny, babies, and in us who are big people. Those tiny details God has put into all of us from our earliest days in our mother's womb to wherever we are now. And just because they're not working well for you now doesn't mean that's because that's how they were designed to work. Oftentimes it's through our choices, maybe not always, but usually. And there's a lot we can do to get back in line with that. You can know that God made our bodies well just by looking at how He designed them and how perfectly He designed them. And when you cut and you watch when you think about when you get a cut and you watch your body heal. Have you ever done that? Have you ever paid attention? I know I said to my husband the other day, I had scraped my knuckle, still is in the healing process, on the bottom of a swimming pool. Okay, so it's like concrete, and I had scraped my knuckles, and it was kind of pink and a little bit bloody on the first day. Not like bloody, but you know what I mean, had that red look to it. And the next morning it was completely scabbed over. And I said, I wish there was some way that I could have like taped a camera to my hand to record what that process looked like while I was sleeping. Because God made that particular little scrape, it was just the very top layer of my epidermis getting scraped off. He made that to heal itself. And how cool it would be on a microscope level to be able to watch that happen. But we can't. We got to sleep. We got to do stuff, right? But when you think about those healing processes that he built into our being to fix the damage and lay down new cells to replace the damaged ones, and then for the cells that are damaged to get rid of themselves and to be pushed out. And, nothing in your body ever goes to Home Depot or to Lowe's to find new parts to replace the ones that got messed up, right? Our body actually just creates the new parts that we need. That is a glimpse into the beauty of God's design. If you've ever gotten sick and you've truly waited it out, you didn't take medicine, you let your fever do its job. If you've ever just watched that process happen, if you followed your body's cues to get rest and to fast, and then you've watched God heal you using the processes that he built into the fabric that is you. Then you start to realize that he meant for us to be well. He knew that things would happen, that we would encounter things in this fallen world that would cause damage or that we would get sick. But he built us to be able to face those insults and to get better. So knowing that, we can know that it is not inevitable that we will have to live a life of sickness. But if we live the way that culture tells us to, then it does become inevitable. Because culture works directly against the way God designed us to work. And that's putting it in a nutshell right there. How so? How does culture work against our body's ability to work the way that God designed it to? How is it that I can know that sickness does not have to be inevitable? Well, beyond the fact that I watch it all the time, I watch people change their choices and change their lifestyle and reverse the damage that's been done because their body is still there trying to heal. And if you will stop the insults, the healing can happen. Beyond that, I want to talk to you about 3 things that we can look at and know that our body can work well and that sickness is not inevitable. The first thing is diet, our diet. And when I say diet, that word is just the foods that you eat. It's not saying you go on a diet, which is restrictive. It's talking about the foods that you choose to eat. Our culture's diet is inflammatory in nature. What do I mean by that? Well, inflammation, the inflammatory process in our bodies is there for a reason. And that's what you'll find as you study this, by the way, is that the things that are causing us so many problems are actually there for a reason. But because of the way that we live, those things are activated all the time and we can't keep it up all the time. They're there to be activated for short bursts of time to fix a problem and then they go back to sleep, basically. But the way our culture has us living, it keeps these processes activated all the time. So one of those is this inflammatory process. It exists to help the body heal, and that's great. There are hormones that are meant to be present in brief spurts, and they go where they need to do their job. They do their job, and then they stop. They go back down, the levels go back down, and they go back into kind of a more dormant phase. But they are remaining in effect long term when we do things like eat a diet that is inflammatory in nature. It causes this inflammation throughout our bodies day in, day out by the foods that we eat. When inflammation is always present, it's like the body is always on the alert. And eventually that causes downstream effects and so your body can no longer respond properly to new acute insults, acute meaning like all of a sudden insults. So sickness that does come along is worse because that inflammatory process is worn out. When you eat sugar, that leads to insulin resistance with time, and that leads to more inflammation. When you eat bad fats, That leads to oxidative stress, which leads to inflammation. That's just two examples of things that we're doing every day in our culture by the foods that we're eating that are keeping our bodies inflamed so that our inflammatory process is always activated so that other things, other sicknesses, when they creep in, are worse than they would be and sometimes just stick around chronically. But when you eat real food, especially real food that is locally raised and harvested in season as it's in its peak ripeness, then you get your the body gets its fuel that it can use, that it knows how to use, that it recognizes. And this is why you feel better, because your body isn't bogged down trying to figure out what to do with the sludge. I use this example a lot, but I mean, if you take a car, which is designed by the manufacturers to run on gasoline, and you put something other than gasoline in the tank, it cannot function. And yet our bodies are designed to run on real food, and our culture and our world and all its quote wisdom has created all these frankenfoods, not even real foods. And we put them in our bodies, and then we wonder why our bodies don't work right. We wonder why we're sick. We wonder why we're inflamed and overweight and can't do our day-to-day functioning without some kind of stimulant like coffee to get through the day. It's because our bodies are bogged down by stuff that is not the fuel that God designed us to work on. Think of all the food that you eat from day to day as filling some need that your body has, okay? If you're eating junk, it still has to be dealt with. So that junk just gunks up the processes where your body's looking through all this stuff that you eat. It's trying to find the nutrition. It's sorting through. It's like, all right, so where's the nutrition that I need? Where's the vitamin A? Where's the vitamin B? Where's the C? Where's the D? Where's all the things that I need? And it's having to sort through all that stuff. And when it's junk food or food that is not real food or ultra processed food, then your body's just bogged down trying to find it all. It gets really tired. That's why you feel so, ugh. Is that a good quote? That's why you feel so, ugh. But I mean, you know what I mean. You're bogged down. Your system is gunked up by junk. But if you eat good food, then the contents and the nutrition of that food are used by your cells to do the jobs that they need to do the way God designed them to do it, and you feel better. You feel good. One thing I've really noticed, both with my coaching clients and just myself, is that we come to a point where we just kind of like feeling good. And we like it so much, and they like it so much, that they don't want to eat the junk anymore that they used to crave and love. They don't want those foods anymore because they love feeling good so much that they don't want those bad feelings. I actually find myself looking at food that I used to really enjoy, but then I would enjoy it while I was eating it, but then I'd feel bad after. And as I look at the food and consider eating it, I actually feel a little hint of that bad feeling that I know I used to get. And I feel it as if I actually ate it. And that's enough to make me not want to eat it. For example, I've used this one a lot lately because it just stands out. Cheddar's. If y'all have Cheddar's, it's a restaurant in the South. I don't know if it's everywhere or whatever, but Cheddar's is known for giving you really good portion sizes. And if you go to Cheddar's and you order a chicken fingers meal, you got a pile of chicken fingers, deep fried, crispy, all that. Okay. Sounds good on one level, sounds awful on another, and a pile of French fries. And that used to be what I would get every single time I would go there. And now when I look at that on the menu, I don't go often, but when I go and I look at that on the menu, I feel gross just even looking at it. And now I choose something more like grilled chicken or salmon or something like that. And it is so good. And I get vegetables instead of the French fries that are fried in inflammatory fats. And I feel good when I leave. Another example, and I think I might have used this one a few weeks ago on a podcast. I can't remember if I did or not, or if I was just talking to somebody. But one of some men from our church went on a mission trip a few weeks ago. And when they got back, one of the things they were afraid of course, when they win, is the thing that everybody tells you to be afraid of, and that's of getting sick when you're in a foreign country. And so they had taken some medicines with them, and they had took them or taken them, whatever the right grammar is. They'd taken them even before they got sick, and that has its own issues, but I won't go into that part. But they didn't get sick. One of them in particular didn't get sick, and then he was giving us a report on how it all went, and he talked about how when he got back home after his first meal, he got sick. And at first he thought, well, maybe he had just brought sickness home and had finally caught up with him. But then he got to thinking, the country that he had been in, most of their ingredients are clean. They're not processed because they don't really have access to those kind of things. And so he had been eating a more clean diet than he was used to. And his first meal back home was pizza. And he felt like garbage. And I told him, I was like, did you make the connection? And what's interesting is he said, yeah, I told him, you don't have to eat like that all the time, right? You can actually eat whole foods. He goes, yeah, but it's so convenient. And that statement made me so sad because if that is not the exact problem, we give up feeling good for convenience. And he saw it happen in his life in just the span. They were there for like a week and a half, I think. And in a week and a half, his system had gotten cleaned up. And by the time he got home, his normal diet now made him feel bad. What you eat really matters, y'all. You are what you eat. Your body is fueled by what you eat. And your cells are made of and fueled by what you choose to eat. So if you eat junk, your body is fueled by junk and you're made up of junk. And when I say junk, I don't just mean like potato chips and stuff. I mean things that are made from processed foods that are not like how God designed them. So if you are what you eat and you're made up of what you eat, then your health is also built on what you eat. Because if your cells are healthy, you are healthy. And if your cells are fueled well, you are fueled well. Our society is not necessarily overweight with rampant metabolic syndrome because they eat too much. That could be part of it. But really, it's more so that we are overweight and unhealthy because our bodies are bogged down by the wrong fuel, and that leads to processes that causes our bodies to store that junk in excess fat. This is not inevitable. With the right attention and the right support, you can learn to make the right choices that will reverse these processes and will get your body to the point that it functions like God designed it to. All right, that's point number one, is the diet. Point number two is our activity. Our culture predisposes us all to being sedentary. I mean, even as I wrote the outline for this podcast, even as I'm recording it right now, I'm sitting down. We all have desk jobs on computers, and nearly every job out there has some element of sitting down for hours and hours. We spend a lot of time on our rear ends. And the more time we sit on our rears, the harder it is for us to do something else or even want to do something else. Things start to ache more. It's harder to go far if we try to walk. It's harder to get the motivation to even try. And all this stems from the imbalances in our hormones that get more and more off the more we sit still. And I'm not, by the way, when I say hormones, I'm not just talking female hormones that we all think about when we hear the word hormone, like estrogen and progesterone and all that. That's part of it, but I'm talking about more so the hormones that are functioning in our bodies when we are doing the activities that God designed us to do. There's a lot of hormones, more than just the ones that regulate our fertility. You know that lull that you hit in the afternoon that makes you fall asleep and want coffee and things like that? That lull is because your hormones are out of balance. That lull is because your cortisol and your melatonin are so off at night that when you're waking up in the morning, you're backwards in what's high and what's low, and then through the day, like, you crash because you no longer have the hormones active that you need to stay awake and alert. This is what is messed up when you get things backwards and you are inactive, among other things. This all plays together, by the way. The diet, the activity, and the third point, it all plays together. I want you to remember that when God created man and woman, he put them in a garden and he put them there to work it. That was their work, was to work that garden. Someone please point out the verse where he told them to go sit down and rest all the time, or where he put a computer inside of a house inside of that garden, or where he put sedentary work in any of this. No, he put man upright in a garden to do the work that needed to be done. That work, that activity is key for things like an insulin response, for when we eat that food that we just talked about, for our bodies to know what to do with it. That work is key for decreasing inflammation. That work is key for muscle and bone health. That work is key for cardiac health, our hearts. It is the activity, the movement that we do from day to day is key to all of the processes working the way that they should. Okay? And I'm not even talking about like heavy labor. I'm just talking about being mobile, not being sedentary. Did you know that people who walk just 10,000 steps a day live longer? Because they significantly decrease their risk for sudden death and for things like cardiovascular disease and dementia and so many other things that arise when we are living counter to God's design. And 10,000 might seem like a whole lot to you, but it can be reached with just normal activity of your life, and maybe like a 45-minute walk in the morning, or maybe breaking that up into a couple of 20-minute walks, or maybe a couple, 3, 4, 15-minute walks when you have the ability during the day. And actually, research shows that you get more benefit if you have those interspersed through the day, not just all in one active period. So if you're saying, well, I don't have time to get to the gym, okay, you don't have to. In fact, as I'm helping many of my clients see right now, oftentimes, especially for women, the things we're doing in the gym are counterproductive. I don't have time to go into that today, but God just made for us to be up and active. He did not make us to be sitting still doing very little physical activity. He made us to be up doing the things that need to be done. Back in the early times, maybe walking to the creek to get water for the day, or washing clothes, or doing whatever the thing was where we were up and active. And I know those things seem so archaic, and you're like, oh, I wouldn't want to do things, but were they healthier? Or I wouldn't want to do those things, but were they healthier than we are? Yeah, they were. We're sedentary and our bodies are not designed to be sedentary. And so with time, processes stop working like they should. We start laying down fat like we should not. Our bodies then have to carry that fat around, and that fat is around our organs, causing us untold amounts of damage. We were not designed to be sedentary. We were designed to be active. And when we are not, the way that the culture has convinced us that we don't have to be, or the way that culture is designed or has told us that we can be on our butts all day, but then try to find time to go to the gym at maybe 8 or 9 o'clock when your body's really supposed to be toning down, or first thing in the morning, where we're overdoing and we're draining fuel that's not even there yet, because most of us go without even eating first. I mean, there are just so many levels of working against God's design. And then we wonder why 2 o'clock comes and we can't function anymore. These are all things that are out of whack. You like that? That's real professional, right? Out of whack from God's design for how He meant for our bodies to work. And these are all things, by the way, that we work on with my one-on-one coaching clients. We address all of these. We're going to talk about another one next, but it's just about getting back to God's design. It is not inevitable that we have to be sick. When we work with the way that He made us to work, our bodies will work the way He made them to work. Last one we're going to talk about in this episode, because it's getting a little long, is our environment and our light. Let me read a little bit from scripture here. This is coming from Genesis chapter 1. Then God said, Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. He set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. God gave us the sun and the moon, and those lights are what He meant for us to have. Those lights are what He meant for us to have, just those. Now, am I implying that electricity and lights are sinful? Well, of course not. He gave man the ability to create these things or to invent these things. But like right now, I have these lights right here that are making this video not quite so dark, right? These lights, if I use these lights at the wrong time, are going to impact my health negatively. I have a computer in front of me. That light is going to negatively impact my health if I'm using it at the wrong times and in the wrong ways. See, He created the sun and the moon, and electricity is, and having electric lights is not, of course, inherently sinful. He created fire also, and fire was used for light in the earliest days. So sometimes people would be up past sundown doing, some things that they could do by candlelight. But those things were few because it wasn't a big bright light. It was a dim light. It wasn't a blue light. It was a nice orangey light. And so their rhythms, their circadian rhythms, were still regulated. So while I'm not saying electricity and electric lights are wrong, what I am saying is that our bodies were made to be ruled by the sun and the moon. And those lights are what should calibrate our circadian rhythm, which is our sleep and wake cycle. Artificial lights impact those rhythms because they send signals to our brain through our eyes at the wrong time that we should be awake. And so the hormones of sleep, like melatonin, aren't released the way that they should and would be if we were allowing our bodies to be ruled by the sleep and wake cycles of the sun and the moon. An example of how quickly this can be fixed and how real this impact comes from my husband, who in the wintertime loves to go camping. He loves to camp in the wintertime. And he will talk about how quickly his body will go from staying up till 10 or 11 o'clock at night to wanting to go to bed at like 7 and 8 o'clock because he's out. He goes like backcountry camping, not like glamping with the campers and stuff. Like he's out and all he's got is a couple of lanterns maybe in the fire. And I haven't gone with him in many years since I've had little ones, but I've been there with him before too at these times. And it is striking how when the sun starts to go down, your body starts to feel those feelings of, hey, it's time to go to sleep. And it's amazing how well rested we get when we're out in nature, letting our body's circadian rhythms be ruled by the sun the way that God made it to. And it happens quickly. The correction happens quickly. Beyond the impact that the lights are having on our circadian rhythms, we're also messing up our body's immune systems. Because by being inside and letting these electric lights rule our day and our night, we're also not being outside. We're not letting our bodies be exposed to the sun. And so we're not having the levels of vitamin D that God designed our bodies to have. There's two different kinds of vitamin D. One comes from food, one comes from the sun. The type of vitamin D that comes from the sun is the more effective one, and it's actually made by your skin when your skin is exposed to the sun without clothing and without sunscreen. Our society, surprise, surprise, is chronically low in vitamin D, like critically low for some people. But it's not because anything's wrong with our body's ability to make vitamin D. We just live inside all day long. Again, contrary to how God made us to live. Let's talk about all the things that vitamin D are connected to. And then you're going to start to see how this way that we're living now, that society and culture have told us is normal, is working so much against God's way for living. Vitamin D is connected to our moods. It's connected to serotonin and dopamine production and cognitive function, which all impacts our mood. It's connected to our immunity. It's connected to our bone health, our fertility, to follicle maturation, that's your eggs being able to mature, to progesterone production, to endometrial receptivity, that means the ability of the endometrial lining of your uterus to be able to receive a baby if a baby is conceived. It impacts testosterone levels in men. It impacts insulin sensitivity, insulin production. It has anti-inflammatory processes to reverse inflammation that we talked about earlier. It impacts heart health, blood pressure regulation, your risk for heart attack and stroke. It has impacts on metabolic health, like glucose uptake by your cells, meaning the ability of your cells to take in the glucose that it needs to do the processes, to give it to the energy to do the processes it needs to do. Low level of vitamin D is associated with weight gain, fatigue, metabolic syndrome. Vitamin D is connected with cell growth and also cell repair, the ability to fix things when they go wrong. It's connected to detoxification because it supports liver detox pathways. It regulates methylation pathways, which are crucial for detoxification. It reduces the toxic load in your body by reinforcing the gut barrier, keeping those toxins from being able to pass through that barrier. Low vitamin D is associated with fibromyalgia and nervous system imbalance, and this is just some of what vitamin D impacts. So can you see how important it is for our bodies to be exposed to the sun during the day, under that sun that God gave us to rule our days? When I say rule our days, by the way, you know I'm not saying worship the sun or something crazy like that. I'm saying to regulate the time of our day. It is crucial. And God put us in nature, under the sun and the moon, to regulate our bodies to work. But can you see how effective the enemy has been in convincing us to work against God's design? We're told to avoid the sun. We're told that the sun is dangerous and it's killing us. We're told that we should especially avoid the sun when it actually can do us the most good. We're told to slather on sunscreen, and that sunscreen is actually exposing our largest organ of our body, our skin, to toxins, while at the same time crippling our ability to detox from those toxins because we're blocking vitamin D. We're told to keep our skin covered from head to toe at all times. Even makeup has sunscreen in it now, so our faces can't get anything because we're told that if we don't do that, then we're going to have premature aging and we're going to look old. When in reality, the junk in those is causing our bodies to be so overburdened that we're going to look old from using that stuff. But I digress. That's not what this episode's about. God said He created the sun to rule our bodies. The sun is what helps our bodies get the proper amount of rest. It helps our bodies to be healthy. It helps our bodies to feel good and be strong and so much more. It is not something to be afraid of. And yet our society has convinced us yet again that something God made to be good. And back in Genesis chapter 1, verse, I think 16 or so, right about in there, He said it was good. The enemy is what has told you it's bad. And as a result, we've gotten away from the thing that God gave us in every single day to help regulate so many processes of our body, but we hide ourselves from it. Y'all, there's so much more. This is just 3 things. It's too much for one podcast. But just know that this is actually what coaching is all about. It's about identifying where we've gotten off of God's plan and off of His design, and then identifying the pathway back for you so that your body can get back to working with His design the way that He made it to work. The women who are working with me are having amazing, very fast results. And why is that? Is it me? No, it is not me. It's God. Because see, He's been there wishing that all of us would listen to Him this whole time. Think about back in Acts chapter 8, when the Ethiopian eunuch is reading from Isaiah, but he doesn't understand it, and he needs somebody to help him understand those scriptures. God brings him Philip, and Philip helps him to find salvation in God's truth. But Philip was just making himself available for God to use him. He was not God. He was not doing the saving. God was. But Philip was available. And Philip was the one that just helped him to kind of figure it all out. God is the one who heals, and He's the one that has the answers. And I'm just here to help those of you who are ready to make the connections to understand your specific situation, because we dig into your situation, not just some generic situation. We dig into your situation. We look at your labs. We look at your numbers, your lifestyle, your history. And then we find the path through all of that to get you to where your body is working the way that God designed it to work. The coolest outcome that I've got to share with you right now that we've got going on, the most exciting outcome that's going on right now, is one of my clients who started working with me back in July because she had some concerns about her fertility, because she had trusted the world's pattern and had made some choices that she decided and realized were wrong. And she was worried that those would impact her fertility and her health. She has changed. She has repented from those ways. She has made some simple changes, really, in the grand scheme of things. And guess what? She just got that little pink line a few weeks ago. She's expecting a baby. I can't wrap my mind around how good God is. How quickly He's worked in her life. That's just, let's see, July, so August, September. That's like 2 months, maybe 3. I don't remember the exact date she started. When we do God's will, when we live inside God's will, He can bless us. God is good. Can I guarantee those of you who are struggling and really wanting to have a baby, can I guarantee that working with me is going to make that happen? Well, of course not. I'm not God. I can't guarantee anything. But what I can guarantee you is that if you work the system that we put in place, if you walk the path that we identify for you, you will come out on the other end healthier than you started. And you will feel better, and you will be glad that you did it. Do you want to be well? The path to doing that is to undo culture. The path is to stop believing people who don't serve the one true God. All these voices out there who are telling you what's good for you, how many of them believe, even so much as believe in God, but even more actually serve Him? In every way that you can find a way, live the way God designed you to live. That's the way that you get back to health. You eat the foods God designed you to eat. You live in harmony with the rhythms of the days and the seasons, and you find ways to stop overriding God's design, and you get off your rear end and you get moving. If you're ready to get serious about that, and if you're ready to have somebody help you navigate that journey one-on-one, if you're ready for real results that last, then you might just be ready to enroll in one-on-one coaching. The first step is seeing if we're a good fit. And you do that by filling out just a real short application and then signing up for a discovery call. And you do that at morriswellnessservices.com/application. My schedule for the rest of this month is kind of insane. It is super packed with my current clients and with some travel. So just know that if you are at all interested in getting started soon, you don't need to wait. You need to do it now, because there's not many spots at all left on this month's calendar. So go get signed up now if you're ready. And by the way, if you are not already following me on Instagram, head over there and follow me, because I share lots of stuff throughout the day just to kind of keep you encouraged and to give you more information day to day. Also, follow me on YouTube or subscribe to me on YouTube if you haven't already, because you can get the podcast earlier there. You get them on Friday night instead of waiting for Tuesday morning. But no matter where you like to listen, be sure to go ahead and mark it down to meet me there at the same time next week. See you then. If you were blessed by today's episode, please take a minute to share it with another mama friend you know needs this info, or post a screenshot on your Instagram stories and tag me so I'll know you loved this episode. Then come hop into our Facebook group to find your people and have some like-minded support throughout your week. Also, I'd love it if you'd head to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. You can find links for all of these things in the show notes. I'm so thankful for you, and I look forward to hanging out again with you right here next week.